and welcome to our weekly video blog on dementia hosted by SpectrumEd. My name is Dr. David Hutchings. This week we're going to be talking a little bit about prevention and genetic mutations. The genetic mutations will probably go over, probably 2 to 3 weeks or so of video blogs because there's a lot that kind of goes into that, but I'll make sure that I get into exactly what causes the plaques and tangles with Alzheimer's disease. Remember that there are about 85 different types of dementia and a couple different types of Alzheimer's disease. So we're going to be talking about late onset Alzheimer's disease. These video blogs are being hosted by SpectrumEd, and my name is Dr. David Hutchings, and I'm very excited. We've had a few thousand views across Facebook and LinkedIn. I'm getting multiple people ask me in the community, emails, phone calls at church. So it's really been neat to see the amount of people following this blog. So let's go ahead and get started. So let's say that again, this is a question I get all the time: is if I have Alzheimer's disease in my family, will I acquire the condition? So let me be real clear on this. How I'm going to talk about this is going to be late onset Alzheimer's disease, and that is defined by if we acquire Alzheimer's disease from the age of about 75 to 80. Okay, so that's a late onset. That basically means that the mutations of the chromosomes and the genes have happened at a later onset in life, which is different than early onset. So there are about 4 different types of Alzheimer's disease. So we're going to talk about late onset, which is the most common. It does make up about 71% of the cases of all dementias. So statistically, let's say if your mother or father, either or, has had late onset Alzheimer's disease, the chances of you developing the condition actually goes to about 3 times. Now, if mom and dad had the condition, late onset Alzheimer's disease, then your chances jump up to 12 times, okay? But late onset Alzheimer's disease, and this may be surprising, is not a genetic condition. Now, some of the other types of Alzheimer's are, but late onset Alzheimer's disease is not a genetic condition. The biggest risk factor for developing that condition is age. So let's say that let's say if this pen is a match, right? And let's say that this match indicates your DNA. You cannot change your DNA. It is what it is. So if you have the gene, there's really nothing that you can do about that except for there are some proven things we've seen in the literature to help prevent the condition. And that's what I want to talk about today. So if this matches your DNA, and let's say now we light the match, and that indicates the mutation of the gene, and now we have taken this lit match and thrown it into a forest fire, now it's going to spread. But let's say that we have really taken care of ourselves over the years, and I want to go through the main 10 areas that we've seen in the research to help actually prevent the condition. So if you have a family history of it, I want to reiterate that it's not a genetic condition for late onset Alzheimer's disease. So let's get into it. 10 major areas that you can do to help prevent acquiring late onset Alzheimer's disease. Number 1 is use your brain. I hear like word puzzles and things like that. Those things aren't harmful at all, but we have to use the brain and teach the brain something different. Believe it or not, as amazing as the brain is, it also can be a very lazy organ. So we want to make sure that we push it and to make it to do things and learn something new. I always encourage learning a musical instrument. The music impact on the brain during fMRI studies is amazing to see. And then also maybe learning a new language or something, but pushing yourself to use the brain more. And this is why we do see that even if a person does acquire early onset Alzheimer's disease, I have actually a patient like this now, that this individual has gone on for the last 10 years and is still in a very early stage because she has used her brain. Number 2 is be happy. Be social. Social isolation is something that is not good on the brain. But also, we see that there's been great studies that's been shown that if we have a good social life and you're interacting socially, then our chances of developing dementia decline rapidly. Number one is sleep, or no, I'm sorry, number three is sleep. You need at least 7 hours of deep sleep per night. So what happens when you're sleeping is actually quite amazing. When we have our neurons in our brain, they like to talk back and forth, but what happens is that in between each neuron you start to get these plaques and lipids and fats from things that you've eaten during the day. And what happens is that you have this little janitor, it's called a microglia, and this little janitor goes in and actually cleans out these areas and allows the neurons to be able to have a better conversation, if you will. So at least 7 hours of deep sleep per night. So that's why when you don't get a lot of sleep and you feel kind of foggy, it's because those microglia have not gone in there enough to clean out the areas in the neurons that allow us to be more clear. Number four would be to quit smoking. I think we all know the detriments on cardiovascular health and heart disease, but also it's obviously not good just for overall health and also the brain. Next is exercise. Exercise is a big thing. We think about exercise as being fit and making sure that we're trying to be healthier. However, exercise has been shown to decrease depression, to increase dopamine and serotonin levels in the brain. These are neurotransmitters that help with mood, that help with movement, that help with attention and concentration, and also memory. Eating a Mediterranean diet. My mom always used to tell me growing up, you are what you eat, and she was exactly right. So making sure that we're following a diet that is really rich in vegetables and fruits and grains and beans and nuts, olive oil, those types of things. I'm bad to eat, a steak and red meat. That's kind of at the top, but definitely, something rich in fish and poultry as well. Next is maintaining a healthy weight. We know that if we are overweight, we bring in a lot of other conditions, a lot of other comorbidities like congestive heart failure, type 2 diabetes. Your risk of type 2 diabetes goes up, or your risk of late onset Alzheimer's disease goes up with diabetes. And lastly is making sure that if you do drink that, try to maybe stick more to red wines that are better for you, and also drinking in moderation. So those are the main areas that we can see that have been proven to help prevent dementia. So what I'll say, and again, that's late onset Alzheimer's disease, and we'll cover the other types of Alzheimer's disease later on. What I will say though, and I'll end with this, is that even know that if we have the gene mostly associated with Alzheimer's disease is called the apolipoprotein number 4. The apolipoprotein number 4, what it does is its whole responsibility is to remove fats and lipids throughout from the brain, okay? And so example, if you're deciding to eat supper very late at night and you have a big meal, your brain has to digest all those fats. So making sure that we're eating at least 4 to 5 hours before bedtime also fits into one of those preventative measures. But that apolipoprotein number 4, that's mostly associated with Alzheimer's disease, even though you have the gene, again, it doesn't mean that it's going to mutate. So think about this. The Nigerian population has the highest prevalence of the apolipoprotein number 4, but some of the lowest prevalence of Alzheimer's disease. That means that if you have the gene, but if you take care of yourself and you go through some of these measures that I've talked about, your chances of preventing the disease is quite good. But you'll also, like I said, age is the biggest factor. So I'm going to continue this video blog going into prevention, but also mutation, so we have a really good idea of understanding what happens when those genes mutate and what creates what we all have heard so many times about, the plaques and the tangles. Again, my name is Dr. David Hutchings. You're able to view these on Facebook, also on LinkedIn, and especially on SpectrumMed's website, who's been hosting these. Extremely excited about the attention on the video blogs, and look forward to seeing you again next week, and we'll talk more into genetic and mutations, and specific to different types of Alzheimer's disease. Thanks for viewing in.